here. So Clarissa, I'm going to introduce you first. Clarissa was elected in 2021 to represent Ward 2 on Riverside City Council. She chairs the Inclusive Community Engagement Government Process Committee, otherwise known as CGC, right? CGC? I think that's it.
ICGC.
ICGC, I knew, okay, ICGC, there we go. And among other areas, she has overseen the redistricting process for the past year. She dedicated herself to the Riverside beautification representation through arts and murals. She is an artist. She does support the arts, and the ICGC committee also did a review of an analysis of the Board of Ethics and the ordinance, and made some changes to that as well, which we're very appreciative of. And so with that, Clarissa, we want you to tell us about your experience, you know, as a woman and as being, you know, in politics, how you think being a woman has affected your ability both positively and negatively for running for office, or actually whatever you want to talk about like that. You're on.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Well, thank you all for having me. And I know many of you in the room, so it's a pleasure to see most of you again. And for a few of those that maybe I don't know, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for the introduction, Freya. Freya is the Ward 2 representative commissioner for the Board of Ethics. So Freya, thank you for your representation for our community. But yes, for myself, it's been a journey. I think just as a woman in politics, I'm actually sorry, looking down to open up the questions that were sent to me. There were a couple questions I was thinking about, and these are the ones emails I just want to share with folks as I make my comments that I was thinking about, which is, are there any obstacles you face as a woman in politics? Have you ever encountered prejudices and treatment or the men around you have not? And what about being a woman has helped to be successful? And then also thinking about what Freya just posed. You know, one of the first things that comes to my mind when I think back to when I started working for the city council, before I was a council member, I was a council assistant. And at the time, former Councilman Andy Melendrez was the only Latino council member who was representing the Latino community on the council. And I remember I always specifically remember one time going to an event at the Mission Inn. And I remember walking into one of their ballrooms, and I kid you not, it was nothing but men. And I was the only woman of color walking in that room. And I was approached immediately and was told I was in the wrong room. When I confirmed I was there to speak on behalf of the council member, more than one person tried to convince me that I was not supposed to be there to speak. And essentially they were trying to tell me that I was not welcome to speak was really what was being said to me, even though they weren't saying it clearly. And then I was sent there obviously to do my job. And I remember, and it's still a weird but really bad gut feeling, like even talking about it now, but I just remember how it felt to walk into spaces and it was clear that I was not wanted, that I was not respected. And at that event, I will always remember introducing myself to multiple individuals and sharing what my role and my title was in the work that I did. And I will always remember the insult response to me that was, "Oh, that's great to hear. You would make a great model." And to be told to share that I'm a legislative field representative to a city council member, and to have more than one person respond to me that I should just go look pretty, basically, instead of doing my job again. Those were hard moments that I had to bite my tongue, smile, and had to find a way how to politely move forward and carry myself with integrity and carry myself with my own self-respect, and to have to continue to move through those spaces and to remind myself that despite what those people were saying, projecting, and how small they were trying to make me feel, I again had a job to do. And my job was to show up and to give my Ward 2 update at the time for another council member. But I went through it and I did it, even despite feeling so terrible, and to know that people feel comfortable treating you that way. And I think that those are the things that are still sometimes shocking and jolting, that you think to yourself that again, the world that we live in, you would think people would be inclusive, accepting, or would know better. But the truth is, you still find people with these, I guess, who haven't grown or who don't have respect for women in politics, or want to see women in spaces in general, right? And we see this happening now across the nation with the war on women happening, and the war on people, I would say, or to any self-identifying woman or person. And so for myself, even now being a council member, I will share another example that I find sometimes very shocking and disappointing. My council assistant, many of you know Miguel Lujano, another example of me being now a council member, when we would show up to meetings together, let's say I'm an example, we were going to do a cannabis tour. We went to go meet with the CEO and go meet with their team. It was all men. Miguel and I walk up to make our introductions. Only one person there knew me in that team. The rest of them didn't know me or know who I was. They all went to Miguel and said, "Hello, councilman, it's good to meet you." Everybody assumed that the man walking up was the council member, not me. Then, once it was clarified I was the council member, throughout that tour, those men still kept talking to Miguel like he was the decision maker. And Miguel literally had to say to that group, "You're talking to the wrong person. I'm her assistant. She is the council member." And finally, like 30 minutes into this tour, they all finally realized, wow, we are not respecting that this is the elected. And why was that? You tell me. So I think I share those moments and these stories with you because these are moments we live through, and these are lived experiences I've had to, I will say, endure. But I think they're also moments that have really helped me to shape who I am, to continue to also realize why representation is so important and why it's important to have people on your team who are also feminists and who will speak up for you and who will stand with you and who are proud to stand by women and to say, I work for this person or I work with this person. So I'm very proud to have someone like Miguel Lujano, who's on my team, that respects working with the councilwoman and the respects, who I am as an individual in this place. But we have seen, and I don't know, I'm sure the other women here tonight can probably speak themselves to, that's not always the case. And we still face those challenges in the workspace, even just trying to do our work advocating for communities. I've seen my council colleagues, my councilwomen, in some ways be spoken down to or be spoken to in ways that I don't feel were respectful or appropriate. And I'm grateful that I think there's been times we've kind of stood up for each other, or that we have been there to at least hold the ground and say, no, we do have the ability to speak on this issue, or no, we do have a right to speak up on this item, even if you're uncomfortable about us taking a position on this. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's important for us, that we have to remember that being women here still today, there's still a lot of barriers we're breaking through. And I'm still shocked that I'm the first woman ever elected to represent Ward 2. I still can't believe I'm the first Latina in my ward, and to be the second after Councilmember Plasencia. I still get goosebumps to be on the dais with my fellow LGBTQ representative, Councilmember Edwards, and just to be able to be up there with these women and to know that we bring another representation and mindset that no one else can usually share. And that's also the perspectives of being mothers. And I say that seeing my beautiful colleague as she rocks her baby, and my daughter's in the room waiting for me when I'm off so she could be with me too. But all of those what we bring, I think, are transformative. And I carry with me my life experiences that help me, I think, to be a better champion and fighter for my communities. And I'm very proud to be a woman. And I do identify as queer, identify though as a woman proudly as well. But to be a councilwoman in Riverside, it's like, what a time to be alive. So I'll stop there and just wanted to share that those are some of my experiences. But it is always an honor to fight with and for you all. And I want to thank you for having me here today.
I want to thank you so much for that, because I come from another generation. I come from the generation that fought for, the women's rights and all the laws, et cetera, and everything. But, when I would go for a job and this doesn't happen anymore, they would ask me if, when I planned on getting married, when I was going to have a baby. And then after I had a baby, they would ask me what my plans for childcare was and when was I going to have another one, etc. And those questions hopefully are not being asked anymore. I hope they're not. And so, but I do appreciate, the experience that you shared. And I think it's just all too true for you and for many others, with your background. And so the other thing I wanted to ask you, Clarissa, and I'm going to ask everybody this, what do you think we as Democrats can do to further the movement? What is it that we need to do? Because there's a lot of issues going on. Bill Staley, don't even want to be able to say that word in my mouth. Just proposed legislation against trans people. This is just not okay. And so I'm going to ask each one of you, what is it that we as Democrats need to do? What is it that we're not doing that we need to do? And because we obviously need to fight more or continue to fight. I mean, I know, I've been fighting for women's rights since I was, 18 years old, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am now, but it's really old. And I never believed that there would ever be another fight for abortion rights, but I'm wrong about that. So all of our rights really are not permanent. There are things we get them, and then we have to fight to keep them. And that's like a concept we have to go. But anyway, I'm going to let you answer my question that I'm asking you.
Thank you. No, of course. And my first thing that came to my mind was thinking about how sometimes it feels like as a policymaker, we're having to carry a heavy issue alone because we don't want to hinder everyone else with how busy we know your lives are. And when I think about it is actually the commemorative flag policy that I was working on at ICGC for about a year since I got elected. It was about a year and a half. And really the crux of that flag policy was to be able to get to council a policy that could then be approved so council members could have the ability to propose things like raising the pride flag. And we have not had that in place. And so what my ask would be is to please get involved with helping us to help you to be able to assure we are creating the actual diverse, proud, inclusive city that we say that we are and that we know we are at heart. But to combat hateful policy and legislation, we have to be able to pass loving policy and legislation that could lead to events that help make a difference in our city. And so that one for me, I felt like it was in the final hour, and I actually want to thank Brock because it was in the final hour when we had this coming to council for a final vote, when I had some concerns about there wasn't a lot of community weigh-in, and so I reached out to some stakeholders, and people were able to then provide comments and letters of support asking council to vote for the item, and it did pass and get through council. But we had people in the audience who were on the other side, and and those are moments, and I can't speak for Councilmember Edwards, but we have to sit there and listen to some hateful comments sometimes, and we have to endure we just have to listen to that. And so it helps us when we have you community who could come and could be the other voice, and to make sure people know that you all want these things in Riverside, and we are, again, just the medium helping to make it happen.
So I think what you're saying, it's important for us to demonstrate our support, not just have it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes. Actively submit public comment.
Well, sometimes I go there. Okay, so thank you very much, Clarissa. Now, depending upon how asleep the baby is, Gracie, I might take Erin before you, even though you were here before Erin, because Erin has a baby there. So
please, I have my baby here, but she's playing on TikTok. So go ahead, Erin, Councilwoman Edwards.
Okay. All right, Erin Edwards, I'm going to introduce you versus just putting you on. Erin represents Ward 1 on the Riverside City Council. She was elected November in 2019. She's the chair of the council's Housing and Homelessness Committee. She also co-chairs the mayor's River Bottom. And economic development, you know, I have some thoughts about that River Bottom task force, and she sits on the mayor's housing task force. Preservation of historic Riverside is among her other focuses. Erin, you're on. Tell us about how your role as a woman has either positively or negatively influenced, you know, your time as a council member, or how you view it. You can say whatever you want, actually.
Thanks, Freya, and it's good to see all of you. This is baby Simon, 4 months old.
Can you pick him up a little higher so we can see him? Oh, he's so cute. He's so cute.
He's not just a prop. Liz, my partner, and I are I came home from a meeting and she left from a meeting, and my mom's got the 5-year-old, so we're juggling here. But luckily he's sleeping while I talk, which is what Ramona would like to do when I talk as well. Ramona told me, my 5-year-old, that she does not want to be a city council member because she thinks the meetings are boring and there's no food.
Hey, there you go.
And Mel says yes, that. Well, you know, first of all, it's really such an honor to get to serve on the council with other women, as many of you know, because you helped us get here. Before we were on council, there were no women on Riverside City Council. And so I think, you know, none of us could have predicted that Gabby and I would be elected for 3 months, and then there would be a global pandemic. But I think having us there, having us as parents of young kids during a pandemic to bring that perspective, in addition to many other perspectives that we each bring, was critical. I remember Gabby and I having conversations about, well, yes, of course, everything that we're discussing, but also childcare. Childcare is such a critical piece, and how can the city step up and play more of a role in supporting people to get childcare? And so I think it's just been helpful being visible and real about what my experience is as a mother. You know, I will say, we were in a council meeting the other day, and one of my male colleagues, I said something that was different than what he was thinking, and he turned and he looked at me and he said, "You stay in your lane."
And what would that be?
And I walked home and I thought, boy, I don't remember him saying ever to any of our male colleagues to stay in their lane. And, you know, I stuck up for myself in the moment. So I said a version of this. What I wish I had said was, I am exactly in the lane I was elected to be in.
You go. Yes.
But, you know, I was also looking at the questions that you gave us about what it means to be a woman in politics, or what we experience differently. And I'd love to hear, you know, the other colleagues who serve on city council with me speak to this as well. But something I noticed going back again to the global pandemic, where a lot of processes for everyone and everything really changed. One of the big changes was in the way that government meetings were run. And the city of Riverside didn't have a virtual participation platform before. We didn't have it even internally yet for city staff, though it was right on deck. So luckily we were a little bit further along to be able to implement it quickly. But when it came to participation remotely in council meetings, it was a brand new concept for us. And I remember in those days when we could start having hybrid meetings again, it was very clear that there were some people who could easily come back to the dais and risk it all, right? And there are some people who couldn't. And it didn't escape my notice that it was the women and the people of color on the dais who continued to participate remotely longer. And what was interesting to me, and I understand that we were all building the plane while we were trying to fly it, but yes, we had a way that we could participate remotely. But for a long time, and unfortunately, remote participation has just expired, and I think it's a step back for women. And I hear that there's an opportunity for us to, at the state level, implement something so we can have remote participation again. But I noticed that the people who participated remotely, even though we were there in meetings and even though our cameras were on, our videos were never shown in the chambers. So it was like we were never there. And it wasn't done purposefully because of who we were. But it did mean that for a lot of the pandemic, when we were bubbled to keep my daughter with asthma from getting COVID, or before Ramona could get a vaccine, or when we were trying so hard to protect my father-in-law who had a double lung transplant during COVID, and I couldn't go into the dais, that, you know, it was the faces of those participating remotely that were erased, even though we worked just as hard to be there as everyone else. You know, and I even, and this story still makes me emotional. One of my colleagues, when travel was possible again, went on a vacation, and it was at the same time he was coming back at the same time as a really big meeting for an issue for my district. And I knew that if I wasn't there in person, I wouldn't be taken as seriously, because I hear when I am on the dais, what my colleagues say about people who aren't there in person. And I knew that I had to be there so that I could fight for my district and so that I would be heard by my colleagues. But my COVID bubble was uncomfortable with me being on the dais with someone who had recently traveled, because it was still earlier stages of COVID. And I made the decision to go because it was the right thing for my district. We were kicked out of our COVID bubble and lost childcare for 2 weeks for that decision. And I just thought, boy, I don't think any of my male colleagues have to make decisions like that, where they have to decide between having the support to do their job every day, childcare, or choosing to come in person just so that they will be heard. And so I do think that those have just been some interesting moments to me in my time in office. And again, the gratitude for having other women on the dais, and now the mayor as well, where we can, as Clarissa said, we can back each other up. We can talk about our experiences. We can try to normalize. Yes, this person is participating remotely today because there's a sick kid at home, you know. So I don't know if that answered all of your questions, but it makes a big difference to have many women on the dais, from the topics we discuss to the ways that we support each other to the conversations that we can have. So I'll end there, because I know, Freya, you have a question for all of us.
I feel you in my heart, you know, with all the things with the babies and trying to keep yourself safe, you know, during COVID. But one of the things I like to remind men of, they too had mothers and they have been mothered, and their mothers took the time from whatever they were doing to mother them. That's why they're here. They had mothers. So anyway, but I won't get off on that tangent. But anyway, I wouldn't, you know, what can we as Democrats, you know, do to further help you to deal with the issues that you're talking about? What is it that we should be doing to assist?
I really love that question. And in addition to everything that Clarissa has already said, I guess my answer would be, please dive into the boring. We've been talking about redistricting, which is not boring, but I think to some, the balancing the lines and the demographics could seem like a very boring conversation, but last night we had 17 people give public comment, almost all in support of one map that they have worked really hard for, and it's because they were willing to dive in to the boring, and I just admire that immensely. And I think it's often in the boring details where the biggest change can be made, not necessarily the flashy issues. And I often wish that that more people were willing to pay attention to the boring ones, because those are the ones where we don't hear any public comment. And so having one or two people come from the public and share their thoughts and experience can really make an enormous difference. And then just this one example, we're talking about, and we can't talk about it because all three committee members are here, so we're not talking about it. But the issue is an inclusionary housing policy, which would ensure that as we're building more housing, that a certain percentage of that housing would be affordable. And I had a developer call me and say, I'm sorry, Erin, I just can't support it. And I said, okay, what part of it? Well, I just can't support it. Okay, there are 8 parts of this policy that we have been laboring over on the dais to make sure we get it right. The right percentage of units. Can a developer build some of the units offsite? Do the units all have to be the same size, or could the affordable ones be moderately smaller than the others, right? Can you pay as a developer in lieu fees if you choose not to build the affordable housing? What part of the policy don't you like? Well, I just don't like the policy. Well, you didn't read the policy. Right. So I think diving into the boring and being able to read all of the details and come and speak to those details is really helpful, because it's how we can get beyond the conversations of yes or no and more into the conversations of, but what is the right policy for us? What is the right map for us? And so I am happy to help you and be very, very boring anytime.
I know the group that you're talking about, and one of the things you can say about them, and some of us here go to their meetings, is that they're very organized, and they make sure that people come and they plan their points to be made ahead of time. And it's very organized and it's done very well. But maybe we should be doing that ourselves. Maybe we should come and do that, because as I sit here looking out at you, I'm thinking at all of you, I'm thinking, well, who's picking up the trash on blah 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 street? Why don't I just come there and ask you? But I want to be one of those cranky. Some of the I do like to come though, and I think all of us do, to come and talk about something that has impact, because one of the things I do see at the meetings is just sometimes cranky people come, and that's hard. That's hard. That must be hard at some point to continue to just listen to the negatives, So,
but it is the job. It's exactly the job that we signed up for. It's to listen to everybody's point of view and try to craft the best policy or make the best decision to meet somewhere in the middle. So I was taught when I was learning how to run for office that someone who complains is someone who stands for something. And I try to remember that even when it is the hardest feedback to hear.
And usually they're not the only one that thinks that way, but they're the only ones coming forward and saying it. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Erin. And next is, thank you very much, and I saw Gabby and she's disappeared, but so Gracie, you're next. Maybe Gabby will be back by the time. So Gracie, you're on. Does she know? Are you there, Gracie? Maybe not. Okay, and Gabby is not here. Who else is it? No, okay. Well, we'll just continue to ask all of you questions. So until Gracie, I don't know where she
Let
is.
me text her, Freya. Her daughter might be on
Yes.
her phone.
Oh, okay, okay. Yes. That baby is behaving very well, Erin.
I cannot believe my good luck. I don't know how this is gonna work. He's a very good baby.
That's awesome. I don't think my son would have been behaving that well for that long, unless I gave him lots of food and put him in a food stupor.
Question, Freya.
Yes.
Hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Sheila.
I'm just trying to fill in while you're trying to find Gabby. Erin, you do know that Martha's on this call? And Martha had never, I'm picking on Martha because she's such a good role model. Martha had never campaigned before until she campaigned for you. And I
And
don't
she
know how
was
many times the two of you
amazing.
knocked on my front door and talked to Russ. And Martha's very
Russ was
proud
very
of the fact-
kind. Russ was nice, and Russ voted for you, Erin. So
Yeah, so did his wife.
Thank you both. And yes, Martha, you're amazing.
It's a good
I
role
miss
model
you.
for
It's good to
this.
see you, Martha.
I was just gonna throw an anecdote at you as well as Freya did. I'm on that older side myself. When I first was a young wife, I was able to get a bank account because used my husband's name, and I was able to get a credit card. That's the time.
Wow.
That's way back then. So we have come some ways, but we still got to go a lot farther. Just, yeah, the microaggression, they're not even microaggressions, they're flat out ignorance from some of these.
Yeah, I think I remember when I was trying to get my first home mortgage by myself, they put me, you can't believe what they put me through. And this was back in the 80s. And they made me go to my ex-husband and have him provide a letter saying that he deposited my child support in my bank account versus, I didn't have any checks or anything because he made an electronic deposit. I had to have proof. And it was, I finally, one of the had blew up at them and said, you know what? I'm not telling you whether I use 1-ply or 2-ply. This is it. You either give me the loan or you can forget it, because they really tortured me. I had to provide so much proof, so much evidence that my job, I had to get a letter from my job that my job was stable and all this other stuff, that other people don't have to get. I don't think they do that to women anymore either. Do they have that? Didn't that become against the law? To do that?
Freya, just to let you know, I think we have Gracie now, or Director Torres.
Oh, thank God, I don't have to tell you more stories of my life as a woman. Gracie, are you here now?
Yes, apparently I went through a dead zone that I missed the end of Councilwoman's wonderful, just absolutely wonderful segment. But I am on the road, so I turned off my camera. I'm so sorry to have to do that to you all.
Okay, so let me introduce you now that you're here. I'm going to try to introduce you. Okay, Gracie Torres serves as Division 2 on the Western Municipal Water Board since December 2018. She is a scientist, specifically a water and environmental chemist. She serves on several other boards in the area related to water use and sustainability. And of interest is the fact that out of 5 water board directors, 4 are women. Yes. Gracie, you're on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. I was listening to both our councilwomen talk about their experiences, and from Erin, who has the young babies, to Clarissa, who's newly elected but has an older child as a single mom. It just resonates, and I think it resonates with all of us, even if it's not the exact same story. But Freya, when you were talking about, some of the things you heard, and I'm here to tell you things haven't changed. I've been in a male-dominated industry for over a decade now, which is water. But I'm an expert in my field, and I remember the first time I taught in a college classroom, I was nervous. I was incredibly nervous. Went to my mentor, and he happened to tell, he said, "Gracie, all you have to do is remember that you're the smartest girl in the room." And that has stuck with me all the way to today. There are still spaces where I need to stop myself and remind myself that I am the smartest person in the room. Not in every room, but it helps me get through that imposter syndrome that is ingrained in us as women. When one of the, probably one of my first canvassing experiences when I was running in 2018 was, I would knock on doors. I'm a water chemist. I'm running for water district. And, 99% of the time I would get, "That is so awesome. We need an expert." Like most people, most people should think, I assume. But there were those doors when I would knock, they said, "Well, are you married? Do you have children?" And I was like, "Wait, but I just told you I'm an expert." And I get that advice came back to me where I would have to tell myself, "You're still the smartest person in this conversation," right? But ultimately, one thing that I love about my role is smoothing out the road, right? When development is created in whatever form, whether it's a road, whether there's a flood control channel, it's a building, the first thing that needs to happen is to clear out the foundation. Development growth can't happen without doing that. And I think what Councilmember Placencia, Cervantes, Edwards, Mayor Locke Dawson, myself, what we're doing is clearing out the road so that we can develop our future leaders to take on these roles where they are not hearing those awful remarks, where they are being seen on camera, where their children are not looked at twice when they are taken up to the dais, so that all those things ultimately get eliminated. We're clearing the road, and man, it is a bumpy road. Don't get me wrong, it is exhausting. Like I said, those stories I was listening to resonated with me, and they touched my heart. One thing that Councilmember Edwards talked about was COVID. I remember when COVID happened, it was kind of like this huge storm in my life in general, but as an elected official, it was the time where we all had to really grab onto our leadership book, whatever that was, and start opening it and saying, okay, how do we serve in this capacity? Never, unprecedented, right? I got the phone call on March 13th at 10 a.m. from my kids' school saying, "Come pick up these kids. They won't be back for 2 weeks because of this virus." And my first phone call, I hadn't even jumped in my car yet to get the children. My first phone call was to my general manager, and I said, "Hey, kids are being sent home right now. Parents won't be working. How do we alleviate the burden of what is a water bill for these families?" We were the first water district, because of that phone call, to put a moratorium on water shutoffs. We did that before the state of California issued their state of emergency. And that's something I'm proud of. And it would not have happened if a mother didn't receive a phone call to pick up her children. Those are the things those are the bumps that we are pushing along. And they have, and we if not us, then who, right? There are plenty of times. I happen to be very fortunate. I came into elected politics with a career at hand, with a formal education. And, I really could say, hey, this is rough. I'm just going to continue with my career. But there's just so much to be lost without our voices. Without the women in the legislature that we have, without the representation we have from the Inland Empire, there's too much to be lost too much foundation to be excavated out, and too many bumps in the road for us not to continue through the hardships. This was an exciting week for me. I announced a couple of campaigns that I'm going to be a part of. One of them is Secretary for CDP, and very, very exciting. But, today, as a lot of our news rolled out, I've gotten messages saying, well, how are you going to do it? And, your instinct is be like, well, I have support system, and wanting to reply, but actually it was Councilmember Cervantes that taught me to say, hey, wait, you're not asking this of anybody else. So just, support me if you support me, right? And so that, those are the things we have to get through. But again, it is ultimately to clear the road for our daughters, for our these girls that are watching us day to day, put on a smile and do our work, essentially. And so I'm incredibly proud of the work me and my team we've been able to do in the Inland Empire, but it hasn't been without issue. But I know that it's paving the way, and that's what that's what we're doing it for.
Well, thank you very much, Gracie. Thank you. I'm going to ask you the question that I've asked everybody else. And Gracie, how do you think we as Democrats can assist you with the issues that you brought forth, or are there things that we as a party can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to just start with saying we have an opportunity right now to focus on down ballot races and commissions. There is a concerted effort by Republicans right now to take over school boards.
Yeah.
And sometimes I look at that with frustration, because our focus seems to be at the state legislature and Congress. These PACs that open, which is great, and we need the representation there. But I get frustrated when I see a national effort by Republicans to take over school boards, and we're outside watching we're inside the house watching it burn. And I think, how do we change this? And it's same thing through the foundation. We begin at commissions, make sure that they are stacked with women. They're at your school, your water boards, your boards of supervisor. All of those need to be stacked with women, because there cannot be tangible policy changes unless every single step in governance has been covered. And so that is that'll be my message for tonight, is that we need to look at every single seat, and we need to take it back as a party, and we need to take it back and we need to take them, period, as women, because that's it. That would probably be fairly new, but that's really my message. And I mentioned that because I see a lot of the decisions that our council makes, and as an elected official, when I get calls saying, hey, can you help advocate for this or that? And sometimes my reaction is to say, their hands are tied. This decision was made 10 years ago by a commission, by a smaller body, and it was made 10 years ago, and they're essentially just finishing off the work. And it's not because they don't want to support the community, or they don't want to vote. No, their hands are tied. And again, that wouldn't happen if we took over these seats that we tend to ignore. And so that's my message today, is as Democrats, let's start focusing down ballot and even to those appointed seats.
Oh, you know what? I think that's very interesting that you bring that issue up, but I think the county party and maybe Lisa or Sheila could talk more about a little bit about this, is focusing on those races. Isn't that correct? I can't
Yeah.
hear you out your head.
Yes,
Sheila-
Freya, my job as the endorsement coordinator, I know Gracie's in my distribution list, is to get these seats filled by Democrats.
Mhm. So I believe at the county meeting, the county party meeting that I was at on Monday night, they specifically talked about this issue and about, well, hello, Keri, about how they can support this, and I don't know what actions they're going to be taking. I think they're in the planning phase of that.
Yeah, and you know what? That's one of the things that like internal strategizing isn't anything that we're going to lay out in
Right.
public meeting. But yes, our plan is to elect more Democrats.
Right.
And appoint. We also need to appoint more Democrats.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
That's true. We just need to put Democrats everywhere. That's all. I mean, you know, works for me. It works for me.
You didn't get to my note. There's a note down there to check out any openings on any commissions and boards.
Yeah.
They're posted, get on them.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And then I do want to, because I do want to be fair, and because Gracie announced what she's running for next, I do want to give someone else the opportunity, and then I'm going to get to you, Keri, don't worry, the opportunity to say what they're running for, Clarissa.
That might be you. Well, thank you, Freya. I am proud to share and announce that I am running for California State Assembly District 58.
Yay!
Coming to a ballot near you on March 5th, 2024. Thank
Right.
you.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think that, well, yeah, so I just want to give you that opportunity because, you know, Gracie announced we have to be fair here.
Thank you.
That's one of the things about Democrats, we're kind of fair sometimes.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. Hi, Keri. I want to mention that now Keri Then has joined us. Did you just get done teaching? We can't hear you, Keri.
Yeah, I did just get done teaching, and yes, I'm just trying to get out of one mode of teleconferencing versus another one here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to introduce you. If for those of you who don't know Keri, Keri has been a member of DGR for a long time, and she did help us with our nominating committee last year. But in addition to those things, Keri is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Riverside Community College District, Area 5, and she's an instructor at the University of Redlands School of Business. She served with distinction in the United States Air Force for over 20 years. For the last 24 years, Trustee Keri Then. I'm usually saying your name all together. Trustee Then has called the city of Moreno Valley home and has committed herself to serving the community on many boards and commissions. She is our run for something role model. Oh, well, that's not from me. That clever line is from Melba.
Well,
So,
you know, I have to say that perseverance is a virtue as well as a critique, believe me.
Well, I hear you. So we want you to talk about how you think being a female has affected your ability to run and obtain your office and your life in office there. Although you're relatively young in the office, right?
Yes, I was just elected in November, or well, you know, elected in November and took office in December for the Riverside Community College District. Thank you, Sheila. I see that. And it's been a definitely wide-eyed, you know, I've spent almost the last 20 years of my professional career in higher education. However, it's always been at, you know, either research university at UCR or a liberal arts university school of business at the University of Redlands. And just seeing the crazy amount, the endearing amount, the depth of programs, certificates, vocational training done at our three colleges, which is, of course, NARCO, Riverside City, and Moreno Valley College, is astounding. And it is a very easy ask when we went to Sacramento already. We've gone to Washington, DC already. We've met with all of our overarching both state as well as federal elected officials. And anytime you speak about the programs at the 3 colleges within the district, there is never any concern about whether or not they're valid or valuable to the Inland Empire. Every single elected official, both Democrat and Republican, I might add, sense the need to grow the vocational skills within the Inland Empire. And as a woman, you know, the direct question you asked me, how does it impact when you run for election? The just recently awarded Oscar film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, just brings to mind, because when you run as a woman, everything from how you dress to how you look to how old you are, whether you have wrinkles or not, I mean, you know, whether you have children, where you live, you know, men face similar obstacles, but not to the same degree or depth, because we're still caregivers. We still have children to raise, or grandchildren to raise in my case. I'm not suggesting men don't. I'm simply suggesting that the burden of responsibility falls heavily on our shoulders throughout our lives. And having ran several times now, the fact that I was elected this year was astounding, first of all, and also very rewarding, that the people had enough trust. And, you know, say what you want about running several times, but building name recognition is very important. And as a woman, being present in your community for many, many years, I'm not new. And I think that helped me considerably. And the fact that I obviously was a woman in my field helped me as well. And my children, they've almost lived this life as well. And my grandchildren, you know, they were as happy for me to be elected as I was. So everything, everywhere, all at once, it really is something we bear a burden a little differently than men do. And believe it or not, it was interesting. I was in this meeting with elected women in the Inland Empire, and Supervisor Spiegel mentioned this. Karen Spiegel, I know she's a Republican, but I just think it's an important comment to be made about elected women in office. She said, you know, it really doesn't matter where I go, but Bobby Spiegel is the first person they shake the hand of and say, thank you for being our supervisor. Her husband, you know, I mean, so that's another thing that we, you know, that we deal with. And I faced that similar set of circumstances in my military service. I ran against a person that served with I'm sure honorably, you know, good conduct, probably as well as I did, but he served for 4 years in the Coast Guard. I served for 20 years in the United States Air Force on active duty through 2 conflicts. And the announcer said to him, thank you for your service. You know, so that's something that from a woman running in politics, being in the arena, you face different challenges. You just do. And every day of your life you face them. So, yeah.
Well, Keri, I want you to know first that when you won your election, we were so excited for you. It was like, oh, wow.
Thank you.
So excited for you.
And,
yes. And so I'm going to ask you the question I've asked everyone else so far. You know, what can we as Democrats do, you know, as a club, as a party, you know, what can we do to help with these issues?
You know, I'm going to be blunt because I've been blunt at the Central Committee about this issue. When we endorse Democrats that endorse Republicans, we are endorsing the wrong people, flat out. I'm sorry. I don't care.
Democrats that endorse Republicans?
Oh yeah, many times, time and time again. And you know,
I don't know any of them, but can you give me an example?
5th District Supervisor XDN Gutierrez.
Oh.
Many, many, many times has endorsed Republicans in races that I was the endorsed candidate in. It's a tragedy that we as Democrats do not understand that when we endorse Republicans, I'm not saying good, bad. I'm not trying to say they're Magna or they're not Magna. I'm just simply saying that if you're a Democrat seeking endorsement from the Democratic Party, that you should not be endorsing Republicans. That seems like a simple thing to say, but it's not. It's not a simple thing at all. So that would be step one, quite frankly. Endorse Democrats, please.
I hear you. Wow. Yes, that's a very big one. Does anybody have any questions for Keri, seeing as Keri is one of our club members that
Yes.
achieved office. I'm pretty excited. Yay.
With
Carrie here,
great
does
help.
that give us a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Oh, yes, I am a club member. Yes, you have a quorum. Yes, you do.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a club member since we were meeting, in person, off Spruce Street, was it? Yeah,
Yes.
we used to go to a
That's
restaurant.
valid. Yeah.
Yeah, we missed those margaritas, right?
Yes, we like
Yes.
those. We had good meetings with margaritas.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, us too. Sheila, you have your hand up there.
Thank you. Keri, you probably know that some of us, when we're doing the endorsement interviews for the nonpartisan races,
Mhm.
you probably didn't see my chat, but I'm infuriated with, the folks that endorse non-Democrats. And one of the things that we now ask is, in the endorsement interview time, is would you campaign for somebody who is running against an endorsed candidate?
Mm.
The answer is always no,
Mhm.
but the behavior is not such.
Right. And I think we see it across the board. There are many endorsing entities out there, organizations out there, that carry great clout, and so there would be no way that Central Labor would endorse a candidate that did not support labor. Would you all agree to that?
Yeah.
That just wouldn't happen. If there was a history of someone that did not support Central Labor, they would not endorse them. That probably wouldn't even invite them, quite frankly. But
there was a candidate for the school board that was not a Democrat that many Democrats supported. And from a member of our club reading up on this person, we found out she was anti-abortion and some other things. And that was not a good thing that people did. And that was not our club doing it. She got no Democratic, she didn't ask for and didn't get any Democratic Party endorsement. She said she wasn't, a Democrat, and yet she used Democrats to get elected.
Well, I always say, if you're coming to a Democratic club or party or central committee for endorsement, first and foremost, you must be a registered Democrat. That seems very obvious. But it also would seem as if you have an obligation to support the Democrats that are endorsed by that organization or entity. But we don't seem to have those kind of standards. And then the second comment I'll make as to how we get more Democrats, elected is we have to have focus. We have seen what has happened in South Temecula and Marietta. And we have seen that we have not elected Democrats in some races where perhaps we should have in the county itself. And it's really important that we understand why. We all can see the amount of people that are registered in an assembly district or in a supervisor race or in a local city council race or whatever it is, right? We can all see that. But the question is, why aren't we pulling what I would call sufficient weight? Why aren't we punching above our weight class, not under our weight class? And there's got to be some, internal exploration about that issue as well.
You got to get people out to vote. But, I want to say for that area, that area, though, Fallbrook was the home of Metzger, who is the head of the Southern California KKK. I don't know what it was. He was head of something like that. So that's right there, so that kind of thing is indigenous, it seems to be, to that.
Right.
I mean, they didn't start out as this great liberal place and all of a sudden turn this way. I think they started out the other way and have become a little bit probably more liberal than they were. It's just that now there's media and everybody knows about it, because I remember it was a very big deal with Metzger and all that other stuff in Fallbrook.
Yeah, and it's spreading. It's coming to a school district near you.
Yeah.
And if you think you're protected somehow,
No.
look at what happened in one race, in one unified school district. Look what they did today. Was it today? Temecula USD hired a new consultant to get, and then their messaging, the craziness of CRT in and of itself in a unified school district has no application whatsoever. But they are so much better at creating hysteria. I'm not suggesting we create hysteria. I'm just simply saying they are very good at it.
No, but they will say anything, and we don't do that. They lie, they'll say anything,
Right.
and they have money. They have far much more money than we do. We need to get rich those billionaires need to become Democrats instead of MAGAs,
Yeah.
That's what we really.
I can only say that for the next 3.5 years, I am so dedicated to getting, we have purchased the land and hope to get the money to build an Inland Empire job training center in Yorupa Valley. The
Awesome.
land has been purchased. And the goal there is to extend and to bring in some of the infrastructure money and some of the CHIPS monies to Inland Empire to retrain our incredible automotive certificate program into EVs, as well as other somewhat technical areas of vocational and certificate training areas. And another area I should advise you of is that we are also in the very preliminary stages of trying to utilizing cross-disciplinary modes of having paramedics take our registered nursing classes and registered nursing taking paramedic classes, so that there's cross-utilization between Ben Clark Training Center, which is where the paramedics get their training at, and Riverside City College, which is where the nurses get their training at. This is going to be a very lengthy effort because there's a lot of boards that have to be approving all of this. But we would be, again, leading the pack in the Inland Empire, where we would be trying to fully utilize our facilities in the job skill sets that are needed next year, next 5 years, next 10 years. And we're trying to bring some of that money to the Inland Empire, especially the CHIPS money and the Infrastructure Act money. That's the goal, is to bring that money.
Look at you, Keri, speaking Board of Trustees. I love it.
You get trained fast, you get integrated fast.
So
So
oh my
that's
God,
my goal. That's what I'm set out to do.
I love it. I just love it.
Yep.
I just love it. And so so you probably have work with Bill Hedrick?
Oh, yes, he's the president of our board. And of course, Jose Alcala, Mary Figueroa, and Virginia Blumenthal are the other trustees on our board. And again, good base of people. Obviously, I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm learning about community college. I've spent a lot of time in higher education, but community college is a different animal. So I'm trying to.
My first degree was from a community college, Manhattan.
Mine was too. Mine was too, but it was the Community College of the Air Force, so it was different.
Mine
time.
was one where I did harder work in my community college than I did in my four-year school, because they felt their job was to prepare you for the four-year school, and they just made you work really hard.
Well, we can do that too. I think that's the beauty of community college. We want to train you. If you want to go to a four-year college,
right?
That's the goal.
And
if
I
you
think
vocational, that's the goal too.
What about apprenticeships? Because
Mhm.
there just aren't enough of those around, working with the labor unions and apprenticeships.
It's actually Central Labor, IBEW, as well as many others that we're going to be working directly with at the Inland Empire Tech Training Center. We got to get the money though to build it. We got the money from Congressman Takano to purchase the land, but
Oh,
now we are seeking the funding to build it. And that might be a bond measure. And there's
All
people
right.
out there
Well,
that
yeah.
don't like bond measures. So I'll be, you'll see me on the campaign trail again, asking you to vote for a
Okay.
bond perhaps in the future.